Sneak Attack is a pretty good deck right out of the box, but I think that there are 10 cards that we can replace for under $20 that can make it that much more competitive. Let's go over the upgrades for Sneak Attack, the commander deck featuring Anowon the Ruin Theif, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I am Joel. We're going to go over Sneak Attack, the Anowon the Ruin Theif pre-constructed commander deck, and the $20 that I think you should spend to upgrade this deck to make it competitive. But before we do, if you would, go down there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. Let's look at this commander. Anowon the Ruin Theif, a black, a blue, and two other for a 2/4 vampire rogue. Other rogues you control get +1/+1, so we've got an anthem on our vampire legendary creature here. And whenever one or more rogues you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills a card for each 1 damage dealt to them. And if that player mills at least 1 creature card this way, you draw a card. So we've got draw a card on a commander, which we know is always a very good thing, and a little bit of an anthem for our rogues that we include in the deck. Out of the box, this deck has got a rogue tribal / graveyard synergy build to it that is actually pretty good. It's a little too heavy into pulling creatures out of the graveyard and onto the battlefield, I think. That's a really good effect, but you don't want too much of it. You really want to be very surgical with a card that you pick to reanimate onto the battlefield to help you win the game. Also, I think that the rogue strategy is really good and should be leaned into more heavily than the deck actually does. We've got an anthem on Anowon so we can grow our rogues, and we've got a card draw engine / mill engine built into our commander, so let's use that. Let's take a look at the 10 cards that I would replace for under $20, and stick around to the end. I'm going to show you some more expensive cards that you can aim at for your future builds. First up, I would replace Scourge of the Fleets. It's a 7 mana 6/6, which is fine. It enters the battlefield and returns a lot of creatures that your opponents control to their hand, so it can be used as a finisher. I just don't think it's quite as impactful as we want it to be for that 7 mana. I think we can lean more into the synergies of the deck and run Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive. 2 blue for a 1/3, and creatures you control with power toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. If you look through this deck that you've got there and you're trying to upgrade, there are a ton of creatures that are 1 power or 1 toughness. Without our commander on the battlefield, Tetsuko can be this like lieutenant for the deck and make those creatures unblockable until you then want to play Anowon, raise their power and toughness out of Tetsuko mattering, but you're hitting for harder and your creatures are larger. At just $1, I think this is a really auto include in this deck for me, and it being a rogue just adds to the viability of the card. Next card up I would choose is Sepulchral Primordial. This is a good card, don't get me wrong. I just think there's a more synergistic way that we can play this. This is some of that graveyard recursion that I think the Precon leans a little bit too heavily into. If you do want to take out one of those other reanimation spells and leave Sepulchral Primordial in there, I think that's completely fine. I just think that you can take one of those cards out and replace it with Thieving Skydiver. This is only a $2 card, and it's going to most often let you steal an artifact from the other side of the battlefield. That kicker of X, it can't be 0, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you gain control of an artifact with CMC X or less, and if it's an equipment, it automatically equips to Thieving Skydiver, so we can steal a mana rock and ramp our mana in colors where that would be very valuable, black and blue, or we can steal some critical piece of their combo away from their battlefield, an altar perhaps, and keep them from comboing off and winning. At $2, that's an excellent choice to go with. Consuming Aberration is another one. It's a great creature in this deck, but it's just not as synergistic as I want it to be. Its power toughness equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard, so on turns like 5 through 10, it's not super great. Late game, this is a dope top deck, but in the early game when we're trying to build a board presence, trying to build synergy, this isn't exactly what you want. And I really don't like a creature that might come in as a 0/0 if all of the graveyards get nuked by some passive ability or active ability on some card that our opponents play. We really don't want that to happen. So let's replace Consuming Aberration with Varagoth Bloodsky Sire. I love this creature. It is a rogue, which will count towards our synergy, and it's got Death Touch, so they're not incentivized, our opponents, to block it. And if they don't, it doesn't matter because we've got Boast, and for 2 mana we can search a card out of our library and put it on top of the library when Varragoth is attacking. It's a tutor on a stick that's also synergistic with our creature types with Death Touch, so in a pinch it's a removal spell. I'm a big fan of Varragoth in this deck. The next card I want to replace is Bone Horde. You'll start to see I took out a little bit of the graveyard synergy in here and put more of the rogue synergy into the deck. Equipped creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. It's the same thing as Consuming Aberration. I just don't like anything that can be turned off as a creature and essentially be dead. So let's take Bone Horde out and replace it with Zareth San the Trickster. This card has flash, and for 4 you can return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand and put Zareth onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, so when it deals combat damage you can put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So if any of the graveyards have been nuked, you just don't pick that one. You attack the person that's got something you can steal. Wait till you've got an unblocked rogue swinging in. Zareth San says, whoopsie doopsie, I'm getting a permanent by the way, not any creature, but any permanent, out of your graveyard and right onto the battlefield under our control. Zareth San is only $1, and so this is a very strong legendary creature in this deck to pick up for just $1. Endless Obedience is one of the sorceries in the Precon. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's overcosted for what this spell normally costs. It normally costs about 5, but it does have Convoke so that your creatures on the battlefield can tap it can tap for mana to help pay for it. It's fine. We've got multiple of these sorcery spells in the Precon, so we can afford to take one out, especially just to put more targeted removal in. I think the targeted removal is a little lacking in this Precon deck. You can pick up Go for the Throat for $1 and destroy target non-artifact creature at instant speed. I'm always a fan of put more targeted removal in your decks. Make sure that you can kill that critical piece, that critical spell, that critical creature that is trying to win the game for your opponents. Go for the Throat is that spell. Aetherize, you'll notice that when I go through these Precon decks in these various videos that I really don't like one-time effects. I like value that keeps on giving or completely deals with the problem for good. Aetherize doesn't do that. It does return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand, but it doesn't return all creatures to their owner's hand. They have to be attacking is what I mean, and they just go back to their hand. It just doesn't deal with them like I want it to. And so in the vein of Go for the Throat, let's run Reality Shift and deal with that critical creature forever. Exile target creature. Its controller manifests the top card of their library. Fine, you can have a 2/2, but what we're going to do is exile that creature, and unless it's your commander, that card is gone. We don't want to deal with it anymore. Reality Shift is $1, and we can get rid of a creature. Obelisk of Erd is a common card to run in tribal decks, and it's fine. Don't get me wrong. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +2/+2. Dope. I'm super into that, and it can Convoke, so we can possibly cast it for cheaper. However, I just don't think +2/+2 is enough if we're looking at 6 mana as the necessity. So for 5 mana, let's run Reflections of Litjara. We choose a creature type, rogue in this case, and whenever we cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell so we get permanents on the battlefield as tokens when we're casting other rogue creatures. This is fantastic to rebuild your board position, to not overcommit to a board with your resources in your hand, because every creature that you'll be playing you're essentially getting 2 of, so you can hold some power back in your hand in case there's a board wipe, which is pretty critical for a creature deck, so that you can rebuild. Reflections is $1 card, and it's really easy to just slot right in here, take out Obelisk, and get double of your rogues over getting +2/+2 on your rogues. I would prefer personally to have that effect. Scytheclaw is another equipment that they run in this deck because we do have a solid unblockable theme, and it's really good. This is probably the one on this list that I'm the most on the fence about. Sometimes this card has really performed for me. Sometimes it's been a super dead card. I think it's a little expensive at 5 mana plus the 3 equip. You do get Living Weapon, but it's just a 1/1 when it comes into the battlefield, and it doesn't also give Death Touch, so they are just fine blocking that 1/1 because Scytheclaw for some reason does not have Death Touch. So let's take out Scytheclaw in my opinion and put in Rogue's Gloves. This is a huge flavor win. First of all, you can get it for $1 or less, and it's going to be some card draw. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card. We've got the unblockable theme. I like the fact that Scytheclaw was trying to take advantage of that, but for 2 to play and 2 to equip to be able to draw a card off of our unblockable creatures, That's what I'd rather be doing. Let's keep our hand full. This is a creature deck at its core, and we don't want to run out of steam, especially through multiple board wipes. So Rogue's Gloves is really good from a flavor standpoint and from a gameplay standpoint. There are a lot of mana rocks in this pre-constructed deck, and I get it. For black and blue, you want to make sure that you've got the ability to keep up with all of the ramp that you're going to be staring at from across the battlefield with your green opponents, obviously, and Dimir Kirun contributes to that. However, you've got all of the others in there, plus the normal mana rocks, and I think this one has the least impact. The ability to turn into a 2/2 for just 2 is great. It can't be blocked, that's great, but still I wish it had a little more impact. I wish it turned into a rogue. It just turns into a horror. If it turned into a rogue, I would be super off of this, and I would say, yeah, that's a great card, leave it in there. But instead of Dimir Kirun, I want to run Memory Plunder. 4 mana, either color for 4 in hybrid. You can cast target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost at instant speed. This could be huge. This could result in a enormous play that completely tips the balance in your favor. This is a late game card. You don't really want to see this early particularly. You might like get a Path to Exile or a Go for the Throat out of your opponent's graveyards. That would be really cool to hit. But you probably want to cast it late after some big game-changing, warping spell has been played, and then you can replay that to your advantage for 4 mana. Memory Plunder is only $2, and I think it really fits the mill theme while not being necessarily just focused on creatures. We can also get some of those instants and sorceries from our opponent's graveyards that we will be milling with all of our unblocked Anowon-led rogues. Stolen Identity is the 10th card that I want to take out of this deck. Again, it's a fine card. It takes advantage of the unblockable theme. You can cipher it onto a creature so that we can create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature when that creature is getting through and dealing combat damage. I get that. I just think it's 6 mana. I want something a little more, you know, powerful, a little more impact. We might be able to make a token if it is unblocked, and I just don't really like Might, especially at 6 mana. You can cast it, you get the token, you cipher it onto a creature. That might be it if that creature gets aced. So instead of Stolen Identity, let's run Reconnaissance Mission. You know from Rogue's Gloves, I like to draw cards. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card. All of our unblockable creatures getting through are now netting us a card. Plus, if we draw Reconnaissance Mission and we don't need it, we can just cycle it away. I love suggesting this card to people. I really think it fits this deck, and for just $1, it's a really easy pickup. Real quick, I want to go over 4 cards that are a little above budget for this upgrade, but I think should be future targets for you. And the first one is Sword of the Animus. This is a ramp spell in colors that don't really get to ramp outside of mana rocks, and so having your unblockable creatures, when they attack, bringing basic lands onto the battlefield, even if they're tapped, is huge, and I would really recommend this. It's a $12 card, but I would trade towards this card and definitely slot it into this deck because I think it fits really well. The next card is Bitter Blossom. This is a $37 card. However, at the beginning of each upkeep, you're creating a rogue creature token with flying. Anowon can turn that into a 2/2 with flying. This card is a house in this deck. It is very expensive, like I said, at $37, but I think it's totally worth working toward because in this deck, this card is absolutely going to shine. Now, those are 2 fun cards. Let's talk about 2 mean cards. I say Agent of Treachery because it is a rogue. I was looking through some of the best rogues that I would recommend in EDH, and Agent of Treachery is a rogue. It is $7, so it's not that much more above the budget that I set for this, and I would recommend it because when it enters the battlefield, you can gain control of target permanent. I like to use this ability to take someone's commander and just sort of tuck it away on my battlefield, because at that point they only have the option of using one of their targeted removal spells on their own commander, which is just zany how much value you get out of that, or using a board wipe to get their commander back into their command zone, because they can't just recall their commander from the battlefield if it's on our side of the battlefield. Very, very mean. Very mean, but I would recommend Agent of Treachery as a future upgrade for this deck. And also Opposition Agent. This card is a rogue. I can't believe I'm suggesting this in a budget upgrades for Anowon the Ruin Theif Precon deck, but this is a house of a card. It's going to absolutely not make you any friends, but it probably will win you a game or 2. And if you just want the most powerful rogues you can put in, $20 is going to get you an Opposition Agent, and depending on who you are and how you like to play, I would recommend it. Those are the upgrades. Let's close the book. Thank you so much. Let me know how you have upgraded your Anowon Precon deck. I know a lot of people got this deck and it plays really well. And so I want to hear about your version of it. Let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you like the video, and I'll catch you later.